content over everything. Nothing's about the water, homosexuality, stuff like that. They make, I don't want to get into that. Because I don't see that. I never lived with the guy. So
Well, they said he was.
that's what they say. They say he ain't got no kids, right?
Oh.
That's what they say. That's why his cousin is the one who's. What's the name of the one who's in charge now? The cousin of the Sultan of Oman. I forget his name. Something bin Tariq bin. Who is the one in charge of in Oman now?
Allahu Alam.
It's his cousin. No, they already appointed him, you know.
His cousin,
Yeah, he's already up. So I'm wearing the Omani clothes today in order to pay a little respect to the brother, Sultan Qaboos bin Saeed bin Taimur, Allah yarhamu. May Allah make his grave spacious and grant him Jannat al-Firdaus. I think of all the leaders of the Arab world, he is the leader that, especially Peninsular Arabs, he's the one that commands my greatest respect. And hence the reason why, even though it's a little bit chilly, I've decided to dress in the Omani style as a kind of homage to the elder who died 2 days ago, I believe at the age of 79.
Okay.
Allah yarhamu again. Now, it's because he managed to take the country kicking and screaming out of the medieval period when he overthrew his dad. Now, hereby hangs a tale. That was a palace coup. When Sultan Qaboos took over, I believe, and I have it on good authority, it was at the instigation of the British. The way the Americans control eastern part of Saudi Arabia, it is basically a protectorate of the United States. The eastern part, Dhahran and Al-Khobar and those parts of the eastern Saudi Arabia. Similarly, the Sultanate of Oman is like a British protectorate almost still. And they control and protect the Straits of Hormuz from the Arabian side. So it is to that extent that Oman has real strategic value for the British, just as Eastern Saudi Arabia has tremendous strategic value for the Americans. So we have to factor that when we understand the relative peace and amana, security that Oman has always enjoyed. Among all the Arab countries, we have to focus on the fact that they do have a tacit relationship with the British that makes for a kind of stability. This is not to detract from the competence of Sultan Qaboos, who has done tremendously. As I said, even though he engineered a palace coup against his his dad was a real medieval backward-thinking despot. And it was one of those cases in which you'd say, well, look, it had to be done in order to bring Oman from 1970 up to today, a country that you only hear about attempting to increase the peace. You know, like I said in my post on social media, I said, I would advise Omanis to avoid sushi. People are laughing, so what are we talking about? I advise Omanis to avoid sushi. This Sunni Shia problem. This conflict in the world. Sunni, we don't want no sushi. People can call them Khawarij, people can call them whatever, because they're Ibadi. People can call them what they want to call them. When I look at the Sultanate Oman, I see amana, I see security, I see sakina, I see peace, I see order, I see ta'awun, I see people cooperating. I don't get the kind of overt ridicule of black people that I see in the rest of the peninsula, including Yemen. I mean, I heard people talking yesterday, last week, about if there is the fighting in Yemen and you have the Sudanese mercenaries going to fight in Yemen, and I was saying, yes, we should defend the innocent and the poor who are dying in Yemen. But I am conflicted about a country that is poor, it's not rich like Qatar and Kuwait, yet they still call black people Khuddam in Yemen. They still call them Khuddam, just almost like Abid in Yemen. So, but in Oman, next door neighbor Oman, you don't get this sort of behavior. In Oman, the Sultan made a policy. In fact, they have a Race Relations Act. In Oman, you do not racially discriminate. You can't even have casual street racism like, Zindi, you can't just be rolling up on people like that, like they do in Egypt. Like, and it's a joke, like, no, I'm Samran, no, I'm joking with you. No, in Oman, you can't play like that. You see, I mean, if you look at the Sultan himself, if you look at his features, you can see that there is his extended family must have some mixture. You can see that there is some African mixture, and people now want to understand a bit more about that. And I say to them, I am not a genetic anthropologist, so it's hard for me to be able to unpack the history of blackness in the Sultanate of Oman. Because what are we talking about? Proto-Arabian Aboriginals who live there, from the out of Africa movement, through the Horn of Africa, through Yemen, through Oman. I'm calling the countries by their modern names, and then they moved across into India and also, and you know, the out of Africa theory, 70,000 years. Or are the black people of Oman descendants of, and let's talk about it, the recent slavery at the end of from the middle to the end of the 19th century, when Sultan Said transferred his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar. And I don't have the dates with me because I didn't plan to. And when he transferred the capital to Zanzibar, there was an Omani slave trade that opened up East Africa to as far as Maniema in your country, the Eastern Congo. And there is history of a chain reaction of different ethnicities involved in the slave trade. A large percentage of this slave trade was actually funded by Gujaratis, Muslim and Hindus, Gujarati Indians. And not all of it, but a bit of the slave trade, the East African Indian Ocean slave trade, was funded by Gujaratis, by Indians. Not all of it. On the other hand, the actual slave traders come in different ethnicities. You had the Omanis, based in Zanzibar. You had then the Swahili people as well, based in Zanzibar and along the East African coast. Towns like Bagamoyo, Tanga, Pangani, Dar es Salaam, and Kilwa Kisiwani. But as you go inland, there were African ethnicities involved in the slave trade. People like the Yao and the Nyamwezi were also involved. I don't know, as far as your country, what you call them. I had the names of the Eastern. There were ethnic Africans who were involved. Apparently, what is said is this, brother.
There was a war between Congo Arab slave war between the Mutetela and.
You want to say more about that? Because I don't have that to hand.
Yeah, well, briefly, there was conflicts in the eastern parts of Congo by Tiputu and his ancestry, and they aligned with the Congolese against the Free Belgium
Leopold,
Free Belgium Army, and the tribe, particularly was my tribe called Mutetela.
Okay.
So do you remember I told you about this?
Yes, it slipped me.
Yeah. So there was a war between them, and my tribe switched sides depending on who was paying.
Well, let me ask you, as a Muslim, having described the scenario as I put it out, how do you feel when people say to you, as an Eastern Congolese, as a Congolese person, knowing that the arrival of Islam was partly to do with the trade in ivory and then the trade in African slaves. How do you feel about being a Muslim within that dynamic, within that dialectic? Well, how would you respond to that?
I would say that I don't know. It's obviously a dent in how I see that part of history and how it's treated my people, and because I'm from the western parts of Congo.
Your people went on what you were describing what happened in the east.
Yeah, but they're quite a big tribe.
Okay.
And so unfortunately that slavery has been tainted from both sides. The Portuguese were involved in slavery and brought us Christianity. So it's just one of those things where I'm deep in love with the tradition as an Islam in itself, Islam the thing itself, as opposed to the culture that came from the Swahili people that I don't condone in a sense. I don't condone at all. I am upset at that type of history, to be honest. But then I know it's something that was happening at that time. You know, it was something that was the zeitgeist, that people were involved in that type of, trade.
Well, I mean, everyone was involved. When the British were attempting, and let us give fair dues, the British were attempting to suppress the Indian Ocean slave trade.
Yeah.
Because the British had already abolished the slave trade in 1807 and were dealing with a lot of the problems of what they call illegal transatlantic slavery that was still carried on by the French and the Dutch and other people.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of the ocean, what was happening is that the French were establishing plantations to sort of like go behind the back of the British, whose squadrons were policing the Atlantic. So they went around the Indian Ocean. They had sugar plantations on Mauritius, on Réunion, the Seychelles, and these places, Madagascar, and they were actually the ones that created this slave trade demand that the Omanis were taking slaves for.
Yeah.
The Omanis themselves had plantations.
Yeah.
They had clove plantations on Zanzibar Island and on Pemba.
Correct.
The Swahili had food plantations a lot on the mainland.
Yeah.
Even as far north as Malindi, just off Mombasa.
Yeah.
The people who are called the Waswahili, mixture of Arab and African loosely, they had a lot of, they had slaves employed in the cultivation of food.
Actually, can I say something quickly? I forgot.
No, I just want to give the chain.
Sure.
I just want to show this chain of that. It was not just a trade in slaves. It was initially a trade in ivory.
Yeah.
The trade in ivory, of course, you need porters to carry the ivory. And this is in no way, we are not standing here to exonerate any people involved in the slave trade. We are here about truth. And if we as Muslims, some of our people, as African Muslims too, and Africans who are not Muslims, like the Yao and the Nyamwezi at the time, who were involved in the slave trade, we've got to talk about it. We can't pretend it didn't happen. History can't just be whitewashed. The time for that is over. So let's have to face this history and say, look, yes, there were Muslims involved in the slave trade in a way which is contradictory to Islam.
But just briefly, I think that's something as well worth noting, that the Asian,
the financials.
The Asian Ocean,
the Indian Ocean.
The Indian Ocean slave trade is something, especially that goes back thousands of years, back to the Babylonian times. In fact,
was it big? How large was it? Was it a trade in goods and slaves, or was it a slave trade? You see, the difference in the West is this: America was a slave society. The Arab world was a society with slaves. There is a difference. In Islamic slavery, you could become promoted by dint of your character, your hard work. You could get preferment. You could become promoted. In chattel slavery in the West, you're a slave for life. Well, let's just finish this. You can't just leave like that, because we're just finishing up this thing. So, what I'm trying to ask you is, how do we, when faced with accusations that you Arabs, or we are following the Arabs because they brought slavery to East Africa and we are merely continuing voluntarily, how would we answer that? How do you answer that?
So, like I was saying, I have a book here on my phone, which I can quote from next time. And it talks about...
I know you weren't ready for the questions I'm asking. It just came up because I just remembered we're discussing Congo, and he's from the Congo. So it came into my mind that let me see if I can get us to have a dialogue, a discussion about how we answer that question of the Indian Ocean slave trade as Muslims, given the death of Sultan Qaboos 2 days ago, Allah yarhamu, a person for whom I have a lot of respect, as I said on camera, for the amount of good work he has done in Oman, particularly in keeping Oman out of conflict, keeping the country relatively safe. We're very safe, actually. If you travel in the country, there's hardly anything you see like mugging, stealing, pickpocketing. You don't get, and there's no sense that people are living under duress. You see what I'm saying? There's no, when you travel to Oman, there is no sense that people are kept together by a top-down oppression, a secret police force, a deep state. There is no sense of that. And that's why I commend him highly, and I hope his successor, something called somebody Tariq, something, I think he's of the Busaidi family because it's his cousin. Well, I wish him all the very best, and I hope that this is not an opportunity for mischief-making Muslims to go in there and start create another Yemen. You see what I mean? I hope this is not going to be an opportunity. I hope he's not a weak-willed person who will, accept the Kool-Aid. Because as I said to you, as I said on this thing rather jokingly, we should avoid sushi. Sunni Shia, avoid it like the plague. Omanis seem to have cracked it. They seem to have devised a way to keep themselves being good practicing Muslims and out of trouble. And I hope that, inshallah, the leader... Let me just get to what he's showing me now.
So this is slavery...
Not the light is so...
Sorry. So it says that slavery in the Indian Ocean...
Okay, by whom?
It's by Trevor Bernard.
Okay.
So I read the book before.
Send a copy.
But I read the book before.
Yes.
And what the book is saying is that it wasn't that the Arabs created that market or that trade. It was an inherent ancient trade routes that existed, and they're claiming that it goes back to Mesopotamia and those years, which included also slaves. And also the slavery
predated Islam. It antedated Islam.
And on top of that, they have quite a lot of records how loads of people got into this type of slavery. So there's, for example, spikes when
9th century.
So there's spikes in there's graphs and spikes of increase of slavery. For example, if there was a monsoon in India or these sort of places, because then loads of people would be in debt, or they would require manpower to work on these fields. So there's environmental factors that would increase slavery.
I have a question for you. Why is it, here's a question I want to ask. Why is it that he's describing reasons why slaves, or where there would be a sudden increase in a need for a large number of slaves, given a monsoon, a flooding, needing to drain the salt marshes of Basra. However, why is it we never hear in the history of slaves in large quantities being taken from India to Africa or India to Arabia? You hear of Africans being taken. I'm sure some Indians were taken, but you actually do not hear, or you don't read in the accounts.
Well, the book
perhaps it's a history that has not yet been properly explored. I don't know.
The book talks about Taiwanese slaves in China. It talks a lot about that, and it talks about Chinese slaves and how they gave. So basically, what the book is claiming is trying to make a differentiation between the transatlantic slave and the Indian Ocean slave trade. They weren't the same because there was an element of readiness to give yourself into slavery, and
because of debts and things like that.
So that was quite prevalent actually in those societies. And then also one of the claims, like I was saying, is environmental disasters that would increase slave labor and things like that. But I think next time, I think it's a very good conversation. I'm going to go through that book again and then just fire it up, because it's over a year ago I've read it. And we've talked about this one as well.
We have. I mean, what I've tried to do here is, because we're talking to other people as well. So we're trying to create a conversation where we can answer questions that a lot of Muslims who are not up on their history, who need to actually get a more, the word that you've been using last week, more of a nuance to the history, will be able to say, yes, it's not a history where Islam is some Arabian Trojan horse that was plumped on the east coast of Africa and we all piled in and were sailing across to the... It was more than just that. It was a trade, as you say, in ivory. Porters were needed. It also created a demand for slaves. But slaves were part of a trade. Spices, gold, ivory, and all the rest of it.
But I am totally against what took place with TP2 and his family in Eastern Congo. It was a proxy war, really. They were using tribes.
How would you respond to the argument that Tipu Tib, I'm going to present you a silly argument, but indulge it for a minute. Tipu Tib was actually 3 parts African. He was only 1 part Omani. How would you respond to that by saying, if an Afrocentrist says to you, this Arab Tipu Tip came and caused all this chaos in the Congo? Is there any substance to an argument that Tipu Tip was actually virtually almost completely African?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that
1/4 Arab.
That's one thing. When I first, like 2013, I started looking into this. I realized that whenever they would say Arab, they would describe it to the tongue rather than the skin color or the ethnicity. And that's something, for example, that loads of people don't know. And the people who know in opposition to this keep secret somehow and don't tell people that, you know what, these Arabs were actually Africans themselves who had a more affiliation to the culture and the region they were from rather than this Africanness that did not exist at that time as well. I mean, this Africanness and like Pan-Africanism is like a produce of post-colonial, reaction phenomena, and that did not exist previous to.
Well, like I said, even if you put Tipu Tip to the side for a minute, you had pure African ethnicities that were involved in the slave trade as part of the chain from Maniema in the Eastern Congo to Zanzibar. It was not just Arabs going in by themselves and pulling out slaves by their legs. You had Arabs who were trading force where they would buy from the Yao, who would buy from the Nyamwezi, who would buy, and so forth. So there was this chain until you get to the coast and Zanzibar, where you became pure Arabs. Tipu Tip himself was far from a pure Arab. But still, people would argue with us saying, but do you not see that these people are black, but they're coconuts? They're Arab coconuts. They may be black, Tipu Tip may be black, but in his mind he's an Arab. That's what people would say.
But that would be very anachronistic, as in you're really looking at history from the position that you were in. So we all suffer from I call it the privilege of hindsight, which is we are in the future and we look at the past and cast judgment, and we have a more mature way of judging a situation. And they, like I said, the understanding of the spirit of Africanness was not something prevalent. So I would say yes. Now, as a modern person, I would probably consider him somehow someone who is not serving Mother Africa.
Because there are people who are telling me when I sort of like praise Berber culture and the Berber or the Amazigh Renaissance, when I praise it, there are certain North Africans from either Morocco or Algeria who would, or I don't know where else, who would say to me, I am causing racial divisions. I'm creating tensions where none actually exist. And
who's saying this?
Well, I imagine these people, it's just a sidebar to what we're discussing. I imagine these people to be Arabicized Berbers of Algeria and Morocco. So they're from the country, but maybe they live in the capital like Algiers or Oran or Rabat or what these capital cities, and they have integrated more with Arab culture or what their version of West African Arab culture, whereas the reef people, the mountain people, the Berbers, who are very strongly Berber, who only speak Berber, will want to define as such. And there is this notion that I am encouraging Berbers to be less good Muslims, as if the opposite, being an Arab or thinking you are an Arab makes you a better Muslim. Now that is a problem we have to unpick with Pan-Africans, because we come back to your area, the Swahili area. If you have people like pure black Africans, but seem to be more sympathetic to Arab causes than to African ones, they are being told, well, you have to choose your race or your religion. To me, they're being forced to make a false choice. And the false choice usually means they often say, well, I have to choose my religion always. And you're not choosing religion. You're choosing to support struggles that are struggles of man. And these people will have their own agenda. Whatever struggle you join. So I'm wanting to think about that. I'm wanting to think about that.
So I don't personally, I believe, from what I've understood watching you, having conversations with you, that what you're doing is veneration of the self. That everyone in Africa should venerate who they are because
Isn't
of
veneration a bit strong?
No,
I think
veneration,
have
but-
pride. Veneration is okay. I find the word. I'm just.
You know
quick.
why- you know
Veneration
why-
is a powerful word. I'd say
You know why-
having
you know-
pride in who you are.
You know why I would say veneration? Because if you consider what has happened to Africa for a very long time and how destructive these ideas are that caused us to cast ourselves away. I mean, look, you have a country like Cameroon where there's two different types of groups who are fighting over what European language they want to have in the constitution. Then you must talk of veneration and you must talk of love for who you are, the way Allah has
Yeah, I mean,
created you.
okay.
Because everyone else has
Okay,
that.
I don't want to be associated with the word veneration.
Sure,
personally,
we can-
personally. I want to say I want our people to have self-confidence and self-love.
Yeah.
Veneration, it starts going a little bit towards. I wouldn't use the word.
You're saying it's a bit more like ancestry worship.
Yeah, I would
Yeah?
use the word personal.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd rather say
Okay.
I want our people, and it doesn't have to be black people. Berbers aren't black people in
No,
that
but that's
sense.
what I was
But
trying to say to you.
I want all Muslim peoples to stop this notion of thinking that the more they approximate Arab culture, the better Muslims they are becoming. But I can't tell that to Indonesians. I can't tell that to Malaysians. They know themselves, and they're far better than me on this game. I got to talk to my people who are converting, and like I said the other day, there's been a flatlining in the black community. I've noticed it. Well, maybe you haven't, but I know the days when people were converting every Juma. You see a
Yeah,
home.
sure.
That doesn't happen anymore, and I suspect the reason is this kind of hard, mutashaddid, this hard, joyless brand of Islam that's been taught to our people, and our people are not relating to it. They do it for a while,
yeah.
and then hypocrisy kicks in because there's certain things your body needs.
Yeah, sure.
It's like nutrients that you're lacking. For example, if you come, as I do, I'm West African, you're Central African, if we come from a pre-literate culture, we're going to have to use music as a memory. So music doesn't mean for us what it meant to the ancient Arab, which was about drinking and dancing girls. That's why the Prophet said this ma'azif, this stringed instruments and wind instruments and this hamr and this dancing. They were that's what they were. We don't use music for that. We were not a literate people. So if we have to remember something, just imagine your mother sends you to the shop and you're going to go and buy some food. Peanut butter, this and that. You're going to sing that in order to. So music, or if you're working in the fields, in order to carry the work, or you're fighting military. So music for the African has a different set of significations, and that's what I'm trying to talk about. When people join this hard, people are upset that I use the word Salafi to refer to a whole wide range of things. So I will say I'm more. Let me just not use the word this week. And use the word a very puritanical brand of Islam. When people start a neophyte, a new convert with that kind of Islam, in the beginning, because it's such a contrast from the dissolute life he was living. Let me finish though. I want you to hear the point I'm making first.
Yeah.
Because it's taking him from that life. In the beginning, that clean living is going to make him think that's the way. But after a while, it's like your body's going to be starved of certain nutrients. There are things you will want, and you can't just pull people away from. I mean, the other day I saw you guys discussing, what's the name? Them two rappers, man, Stormzy and Wiley. Yeah. So, I mean, who we fooling, man? We discuss it. I don't hear them singing without instruments. And they use instruments? No, they do use instruments.
They do, yeah.
Yes, I mean, we discuss it, and I shamelessly discuss it. I have no qualms about, but I can't. How do you reconcile that and then saying, well, I'm a Muslim who don't believe in music? You know what I'm trying to tell you? I like my Islam to be straight.
But that's just one of, to be fair.
No, I'm not making a critique.
No,
I'm saying I listen to music.
No, what I'm trying to say to you is
clean music.
No, what I'm saying to you is that the opinion that music isn't something that a Muslim should engage in. Although it's a majority opinion, but is an opinion. There's also plenty of other classical scholars who believe that music is not.
No, but you see what I've just done? I've painted you a picture of the African mind and or the pre-literate mind and the use of music in such a culture. It is not for the purposes of dissolution.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is I get what you're saying, Sheikh, yeah? But I'm just saying that if you look in Islamic history, you will find that including the Arabs, the Andalusians, the Basris, the Kufins, they were all engaged in music throughout. It was always a thing. It's never
No,
been...
but the Puritan will say it was haram still. The Puritan will still say, yes, they were, but it is still haram. They'll still say that.
Yeah, but that's the position.
Right.
I'm just wanting to say that to the people.
Yeah.
That traditionally, you will also find people amongst the Sufis, and in Turkey, for example, for a very long time, you would find music therapy.
Yeah, no.
This is something very...
Psychotherapy.
Yeah, music therapy. This is something that is very attached to Islamic culture. You know, kitab, or the Syriac. I don't know if you Syriac.
Syria, from Iraq, who went to Spain.
Yeah, right.
Andalus, yeah.
So he brought a particular culture with him, and it became the basis, many say, for European folks music. The music, I have right now on my phone an article on blues and
Mali.
Islam. That blues, therefore soul, therefore spirituals, all these branches, rock and roll, all originated from the Muslims and the Africans who came as slaves to the Americas. So I just wanted to say that as well, because unfortunately, I think what is happening is this. For a very long time, there were these rigid strands of understanding. But information now, we have access to information, and more information is being shared with people. Sources are being reviewed. For example, the hadith that you bought, I know someone who went through the hadith and says it's weak, for example, right? And other things like that. But I understand what you're trying to say in terms of what has happened in the hoods, right? And I've noticed this as well. One of my family members, right, they became Muslim in 2005. And 2005 represents something very, very potent in London street culture. It was a year where loads of people in Brixton were coming to Islam via gangs. Okay, there's certain gangs that were embracing Islam. If you look at the connection between hip hop and Islam, you will find it as well. You know, the founding fathers of hip hop were all Muslims. African Bambaataa, Rakim, all of them were Muslims. So I measure this way, yeah. When there isn't Islam in the hood, then something is wrong. You know, then something is very wrong when there's no Islam in the hood.
I know we've taken the discussion away from... We've taken the discussion a bit from Sultan, Qaboos and Oman to this. But I'd like to ask you this now. What do you think is responsible for the flatlining in conversion of Islam in the African Caribbean community?
I would say there's there's few elements to it. One of the elements that you mentioned, but then the question I would before I answer, I would want to ask you something. In the 90s, for example, the Salafi Dawah in the hood was very strong. I mean, it galvanized, it introduced loads of people to Islam also. So how would you reconcile that with, is that what you're saying, that because it's prolonged so long that it became unattractive, or?
No, I was trying to answer it earlier when I was saying to you that what happened in the world at that time, the internet came about. With the internet, you have Google, and people were able to access information. There was YouTube scholars, so many of our people who were not functionally literate, who left school, and they were not functionally literate, could look at a speaker. Because there's somebody here who doesn't understand what is da'i. So I wanted to say it in English and I couldn't remember the word. Missionary, perhaps, who would speak the language of the street. And they would understand it. And a lot of people started, not only that, Imams who came here from America, like Imam Muraduddin, Allah yarhamu, he started a focus on the jails. We leapt from the subject of Sultan Qaboos to why is Islam apparently flatlining in the African Caribbean convert community. And when Imam Muraduddin, he used to speak right here. He used to stand right here and speak. Imam Muraduddin was also the chaplain for Pentonville Prison. Sheikh Salah Jane, I mentioned him last week, also would go to prisons. What happened is, there, to me, in my opinion, there was a disproportionate focus on saving souls from the prison system. And what you get when you have a mass of such young brothers coming into a mosque with no follow-up.
Yeah.
We have no program like the Nation of Islam did for Malcolm X. See, that's the difference. People felt that there's a good example here to be followed. Here's Malcolm X, Detroit Red, criminal gangster hoodlum, under the influence of Islam, becoming a better human being.
Yeah.
But Malcolm X went through a program with the Nation of Islam. There were steps towards reforming your character. What we do as Muslims, we know we get a special blessing for converting someone, for bringing someone. So we are about just capturing heads, but we're not about showing them, once they become Muslim, how to stay Muslim.
Yeah.
So what we get is what you call the revolving door syndrome. They come in, and after a while, back out through the same door. Now, why was this, what we call loosely the Salafi doctrine, so attractive? To me, the Salafi doctrine was preached like a kind of Mac Islam. It was like you open it and put it in the microwave and you heat it up and it's there. This is right and this is wrong, no nuance. Haram, halal, no nuance. And it was easy for people to focus on tangibles. How long is your beard? Would become a discussion that could last hours. How short is your thobe? Is another discussion that could bring fights. So people who are, I'm wearing boots that are up to my ankle, so I should be able to pray in a mosque with my shoes on. And these simple matters, and remember, you're taking a whole bunch of people who are not particularly literate.
Yeah.
They come from a very narrow background. They all live in a particular area. Some of them come from prison. You leave them alone now as converts in a mosque to talk amongst themselves. What you gonna expect? So people needed simple answer Islam. And simple answer Islam for a lot of people who have problems finding partners. In Jahiliyyah, in the days before they were Muslim, they could just go to nightclubs and pick up girlfriends. Now as a Muslim, you can't do that. But that particular brand of Islam afforded cheap and easy marriage. I know this from Brixton Mosque. I know whereof I speak from practical experience, where mahar was like almost negligible, the mahar. And marriage was quick and divorce was just as frequent and easy. So what you had was a situation in my community where what I call ABC children. And I'm going to call it out. They're going to have to split this in two because this is a different discussion. We're going to have ABC children. We have you're married to the sister, and then you all divorced like after 2 years, you got one child. And then I married you. I'm his friend. I know I'm married to you. And then we have a beef and we divorce. You have two children. Now you have A child and B child, and then you're married to him. He's also my friend. And then you all have a talaq, a divorce, and we have ABC children. Now all these children are related through their dads. And you ever say, how are you going to build a community like that? And one of the problems in our community, and it's sad to wash dirty linen in public. It's not a nice thing to do. But when I became a Muslim, it was about building a community. When Sheikh Salat Janeh from Sierra Leone, the first black missionary Dai in this country, left Haringey, moved his family to Brixton to be near the Brixton Mosque. It was he lost one son because of it. One of his sons, Hamad, Allah died because of this. When he moved his family,
What do you mean he died because of that?
Street stuff in the street in Brixton. When that happened, he was trying to see us build a community where we have wives and we try to stay together, and we bring up our children, and when our children are his age, your son, you are my son, you can marry her, that is my daughter. That is what we wanted, and that up to now has not happened.
But I would say.
Am I right? Has it happened?
No, it hasn't.
Do you see a viable African
But Sheikh,
Caribbean convert community anywhere?
No, I don't. But Sheikh, what I want to say is, I think that's one element. There's other elements to it as well. If we consider,
I didn't fully answer your question, I realize.
No, you did. But I'm saying you focused on one thing that is very vital. But then we have to.
I think we overfished the jails.
We have to factor.
We overfished the penitentiary system.
We have to factor 2001, 9/11. We have to factor in the mid.
You're right. Bosnia, Chechnya, Kosovo.
Yeah.
We have to factor in those in the mid-90s.
Yes.
I understand that too. But also the rise of the internet provided us with that information quickly.
Yeah.
You see, I can speak about this because I'm an older man. I'm nearly 60. So I was around when there was no internet.
Yeah.
And I know how we did Islam, how we did propagation of Islam. We went out with our leaflets. We went different parts of London.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people just open YouTube and you find your Islam there.
And also,
You see what? Since the 90s, with the internet, things speeded up for a time. But I still feel, and I'm going to make this point, I think we are overfishing the penitentiary system for converts. I think so. There had been, or perhaps it's stopped now, but there had been an overemphasis on the penitentiary system.
Possibly, but
I
agree.
And if you leave those people together without any follow-through program, you're going to get recidivism. And you're going to get people in the corner of the mosque saying, man, if I was in jail, if this was back in jail, this is what and they're talking and they're happy. The other brother is going to say, no, you got to stop that now. Don't say that. The other brother like, yeah man, if we were in Jahiliyyah, if this was back in the days before. You see what I'm trying to say? Because there's no program upon conversion, no follow-through. And to me, it's a worry. I am saying why I've done these last 3 videos about the effects of, and I'm not going to call the S word, I'm going to say puritanism amongst my community, is because it is not allowing us to build a community. We're not building a community. So to me, Islam is about community.
Sure. But then, how do you, culturally, in terms of like, not every convert came out of prison.
I'm not saying that. You see, don't misguide. I'm not saying that either.
I want to open a conversation.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Right? Not every convict came out of the prison system.
Yeah.
Culturally speaking as well, I've noticed that previously, the most influential guys in the neighborhood, if they were to take Islam, it would sort of have like a domino effect. And you would have that with people who are like musicians and they're very proud of their Islam and they would very like proclaim it, and culturally have an influence. I feel like that as well has kind of disappeared in a way. Because it seems as if like the new crowd, the new Muslims who become Muslims and they're influential people, not influencers, they tend to say, well, I'm a Muslim, but it has nothing to do with what I do here. Like, they tend to separate it. And I feel like it comes from a place where Islam in the West in the last 15 years has been
associated with.
Yeah, so that one, the terrorism bit. So
I see.
So I just want to say that for the viewers, there's many elements to why Islam isn't attractive anymore. Prior 2010 and in the 90s, how it was attractive to the African Caribbean community because of all of these things that start to, and then immigration is another thing as well. So loads of like immigrant Muslim.
That's two heavy points you laid on me there. Yeah. That's too heavy. Whereas in America, you had a ready-made African American Nation of Islam community that came with Imam Warituddin into Islam. So even if immigrants come, the African American Muslims still have a layer above us that were already Muslim, so they can marry from. They have a community. Put it that way. It may not be perfect, but in the African American convert context, there's a community. With us, like you're saying, we are inundated by people who we follow, who are the people who came: Somalis, Turks, Pakistanis, Bengalis, Iraqis, and Levantine Muslims from Iraq and Syria and places like that. And what we tend to do is we tend to automatically devolve authority onto them, thinking that they speak Arabic and know better. So there is that. No, but give me a second because hey, Assalamu alaikum, Ali.
Oh, can I touch your phone?
Huh? Keep my forehead.
How you doing?
I think you'll like this. Check this out. Check that out. Smell it. Shim.
Yeah, what is it?
Etter from Oman. This is Etter from Oman.
Oh, look at you.
Top quality.
How are you?
I was just saying a little bit of a good word for Sultan Qaboos.
Yes.
My discussion was about Sultan. Yes, it is.
But
that's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Because
it's the light. Look,
that's cool. Well, I was just talking about Sultan Qaboos of Oman and praising the stability of the country, to which we owe him a lot of recognition for that. And the fact that when you look at the country, it's like a haven of peace in an area that is quite chaotic. So I wanted to say that, and that's why today I put on my Omani outfit in order to give that sort of, this is how we do. We don't pray to ancestors, but we give recognition to good men by venerating in this way, and we make a dua for them. We don't ask them. No. I hear what I said. You hear what don't clip that. Wait. I said we don't pray to them. I said let me land. You see. So what I was saying is we moved on from this subject of Sultan Qaboos to a worrying development or lack of development where I have found in my community the conversion rate has dropped. Conversion to Islam in the African Caribbean community has dropped. And we were looking at the possible reasons why. There was a spike in the 90s and now that has dipped. So we were trying to explore some of the reasons as to why that is. You were giving me some good reasons as for the spike in the 90s. Yeah. I had mentioned the internet.
Why don't you bring that to Salam?
Well, it's almost. Well,
we finished, but anyway, no problem.
Give us 5. Oh, you're waiting for the.
No.
Give us 2 minutes. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, mashallah, you know.
Barakallah, jazakallah khair.
I think she has a question.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been to Speaker's Corner a few times, and often I've seen people coming in angrier, leaving angrier than which they've come in. But when I see people come and speak to you, they stop and they listen to what you have to say, and they seem like they learn something. How do you think the speakers and Speaker's Corner need to improve to make this place a place of learning instead of a place of...
Brenda! Sorry.
Excuse!
No, but you know
Stick around.
Step in.
I wish you were here in the 80s and the 90s, particularly the 80s. This was a haven of intellect. It was a hive. You had people with tremendous oratorical skills. People I could call names like Roy Saw. I think he died recently. People like, who is in Cuba now, the one who used to stand here, Ismail Blagrove.
Oh, Blagrove.
We had excellent speakers here. What happened in the 90s, a religious arms race took place. The Salafis turned up in this park and they kind of pushed us out because the way they were preaching, we were being made to feel inadequate. However, the evangelical Christians turned up, so it became an arms race. Puritanical Islam, evangelical Christianity. And basically, they kind of edged the other intellectual speakers out. So in the 90s, what happened is some of the very, very good speakers here left this park, and the park was given over to what you see here, a religious arms race. That's what you hear here. If it's not it's evangelical Christian against this one, and maybe 2 kinds of Christianity fighting each other, or black Hebrew Israelites, it's about religion more than anything else. The problem with that is religious speakers, when they speak to a camera, they keep one eye on their constituency. I don't. I want no friends. I want no enemies. I ride solo. I say what I know from life. I've traveled a great deal, and I don't just speak from books. I have a book in my pocket now. I read a lot, but I have traveled a lot. So when I speak, I tell people, look, I haven't wasted my life. I haven't actually wasted or when I come here, it is because I think the little that I have managed to learn over my life, I would like to share it. I would love to spread. If 2 people can understand from what I have said, that leaves me happy. I look at Sultan Qaboos, and I don't want to hear anything about how he's not quite a true Muslim and all that. I look at how that country is stable.
In that case, as an audience,
I praise Sultan Qaboos. Yes.
As an audience, how can we improve the standard of debate at Speaker's Corner?
Well, okay, let me say this. She's very good. You see, I tried to drag her into an Islamic discussion. She pulls me back to her question. That's good. I like that. Now, I think Speaker's Corner has always been a place of heckling. You're always sometimes speakers on a soapbox would have professional hecklers planted in the crowd so that they can bounce off them. And it looks like if it's spontaneous, but often it was contrived. So, but you would, because it was pre-planned, because it was scripted, what's happening here is it's unscripted. It's entirely off the cuff. Because it was scripted, it flowed. Because they prepared it. they'd prepare their pattern, their banter, and their back and forth, their repartee, their call and response. We don't do that. As he starts hitting me with ideas, so we float from the subject of Sultan Qaboos to why Islam is flatlining in the African Caribbean community, which I come from. He's from Africa, I'm from the Caribbean. And I am witnessing a worrying trend. For me as a Muslim, to me it's a worrying trend. And I said to him, perhaps we have overfished the penitentiaries. We focus too much on one brand of convert with no follow-up program. So these people, those who didn't become recidivists, actually focus on a particular kind of Islam, and that brand of Islam does not facilitate the growth of community in the form of families. And what I am concerned about is creating an African Caribbean, an African Muslim community based on Jama'ah families.
Sheikh,
Married people with jobs, with children at university, getting married and producing things in the arts, in technology, in industry, chemical engineers, what have you. That's what I'm interested in.
my question was,
I understood the question. I'm drawing it on my topic. You don't understand what I'm doing. I know, she's good. She pulled me back to her subject, but I don't want to talk about speakers going only. Hit me, come on, ask me something else.
Well, the thing is, like, I've been here for about 6 weeks, week in, week out, and I am bored of some of the topics of conversation. Most of the topics of
Religion.
conversation we're discussing are well, they're just so pointless, I'm not even going to go into it. And I want to see a better standard of discussion. I want to see a better standard
Hear what I do.
I've got nothing to speak about.
I'll tell you what I do. I believe if you have to feed a lion, because you've seen me in the zoo a lot, that's where I practically live. Now, if you have to feed a lion his nutrients, a caged lion, you can't take the pill and put it in the lion's mouth. You can't do that. But that lion or tiger needs its nutrients. What do? You stick the medication into a lump of meat. You put the meat on a skewer and you feed the lion the meat through the bars, and he takes it from the skewer. Embedded in the meat are his nutrients, his tablets, his daily medication. That's how I like to do my Islam. I'm not gonna come here and start telling you what 20 other Muslim missionary speakers can say better than I. What I do is I will give you your religion as part of a balanced diet. It's like a bit of your vitamins and your minerals on the side. You don't even know you're getting it, like what I'm doing with you right now. See, that's how I do it. If people want to come straight, that's fine. Not everybody tolerates religion being preached at them. I don't like it. Don't preach at me. And I know many people don't. So I take my religion from my anthropology. I wrote an essay the other day on cats. Cats, felines. People wouldn't read it. Hardcore Muslims wouldn't read it. Because, what are you talking about? A foolish dad, got a cat. But I know the Prophet Muhammad loved cats. He had a companion called Abu Huraira. Huraira, the father of the kitten. They loved cats. And I was saying, let me look at perhaps the reason why. And I said, is it perhaps the independent spirit of the cat that the Prophet appreciated? Because cats don't do what there's an expression in English, I don't know if English is your first language. Okay, you know the expression herding cats? It's like trying to herd cats. That's how difficult it is to domesticate cats, any animal of the cat family. And I said to her, I went on from that subject saying, perhaps domestication of animals is where humans learned from that to keep slaves, to keep other humans as possessions. Perhaps. And from that, perhaps, were we, my people, 400 years in slavery, have we been domesticated the way wolves were domesticated into dogs? Maybe we should have been cats. So after 400 years, nobody would have been able to domesticate us. So I would take a topic and do that. And I'm throwing ideas, I just call them random doodles. And I throw them out there for people to think. But I put my Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I put his name in there. Because I'm trying to give you a message that's holistic. I don't want to give you a message like, be Muslim, be Muslim. Now, what do that for? People don't like people who are too pious, too sanctimonious. So what I would do, I would give you a message as part of your life. You like cats? Check this out. That's what I will do. Our Prophet loved cats too. And perhaps, I'm not saying that's the reason, but perhaps it's the reason why. He loved the independent, self-willed nature of the cat. You can't tell a cat what to do.
In that case, is there any point in like approaching some of these like extremely evangelical Christians and trying to have a conversation?
I do not. I severely avoid them like the plague. My mother is one. My mother's an evangelical. For the purposes of disclosure, my mother's an evangelical Christian. Of course, I am the son of Satan. That's all right. She sincerely believes that I am following the path of Satan. Yet I know for a fact my mother loves me to death. I know that. So I understand the cognitive dissonance that's going on. So I don't want to bug her further than that. I know she already has enough cognitive dissonance as it is. That's her son. And my cousins tell me, do you know you're your mom's favorite son? I don't know that's true, but I know she loves me. I know it. Yeah? She can't reconcile that. So what she does is she compartmentalizes. When I'm with her, I'm not a Muslim. And when I'm with her, for example, I would disappear and go and pray. I wouldn't put a mat in front of her. Allah, what? No. I go somewhere. She knows I've disappeared to go and pray. We pretend we don't talk about it. Because if her pastor hears about it, you have the spawn of Satan in your house. You're going to confuse the old lady more. I ain't doing that. So, if I can't fix my own home, why am I going to try to convert these people? I can't convert my own mom. I know that for a fact. I can't do it. She used to wipe my butt when I was a child. She ain't listening to me. She ain't listening to me. You think if I can't set the example in my home, well, I don't live with my mother. I'm not going to try to convince any of these people. I don't do that. As I said to you, I'm going to repeat the one last time. My way of teaching Islam is holistically. I'm African in origin. And I believe that our people are not being served best by the way we are adopting Islam. I don't believe it. And I believe we are susceptible to militant Islam. And I told people about this book, one of the first books I ever bought in 1979. This book I bought, I'll put it for the camera to see it, because the last time they couldn't see it. I bought this, and it's the first time in my life I saw this word, militant, with Islam. This was not the Islam I knew as a child. For some people it's normal. For Dawuud perhaps it's normal. It's perhaps normal for other people who have been brought up, like some Palestinian children who have known nothing, but when they're asked to draw pictures, they draw tanks. They draw aircraft thingies. When in Afghanistan they make carpets nowadays. In Afghanistan, the carpets, the embroidery in the carpets show tanks. And these ancient Herat, superior hand-loomed carpets. The motifs in the carpets are military munitions and hardware. Aeroplane flying, dropping bombs, tanks on the ground. This is woven into a carpet. That's the people's lives, you see? I didn't know that life. I was very privileged. Our Islam was very peaceful. I lived in a Catholic village, and we had a mosque in the village. My village is called Cantaro Village, Santa Cruz. Hear the name, Santa Cruz, Holy Cross. It's a Christian name. My country is called Trinidad, the Trinity. Nobody bothered us. So I didn't know about this until 1979. But they don't know the world any different. They have always known Muslims are always giving trouble. Muslims are always... It wasn't always like that in my world. So I have seen this development, and I want my people to be the way it was in my youth. And maybe that's wrong. Here's what I want. I want my people to recognize alcohol in the Caribbean is killing people. Rum drinking, it's killing my people. The party life, there's too much emphasis on dancing and partying, and many of us, and the free sex and everything else. So we Muslims have solutions for that. The main solution, have families and concentrate on your families, your children's education, and when his son wants to get married, he marries to his daughter. We are not going to any other community who's going to racially abuse us. I am going to say this to hurt people's feelings now. Let me hurt a couple of people's feelings. I know too many friends who have been married to a Pakistani girl, a Bengali girl, an Arab girl, usually Moroccans. When they go to a family Eid, a holiday, and all the cousins get together, they're the nigger cousins. This group is the nigger cousins. I want that for my kids. I don't want that for my kids. And who vex, as we say in Trinidad, who vex loss. Who don't like it? That's y'all. It's the truth. I don't, not because I hate you. I wouldn't be wasting this time talking if I hate you. But I know if your parents will not be comfortable with these black grandchildren, I wouldn't do that to these grandchildren. I'm not hurting me, I'm hurting them. And we don't realize the extent, we Caribbeans, the extent this white struckness turned into Arab struckness, this colorism, this always seeking fairer skinned wives from other communities, how much we've hurt these children. Are we not building community? The main thing I'm trying to leave people here with. So that's why my Islam is not taught in a way that will come directly at you. I will circle you like a predatory shark. I do not bring Islam on head on like that. I think people like, there's a teacher in America I love, Imam Siraj Wahaj, Masjid Taqwa on the corner of North Strand and Bedford. I love going to his mosque in Brooklyn. So Imam Siraj Wahaj was a teacher in a former life. And when he gives a khutbah, Imam Siraj Wahaj he could see two birds on a tree. And he can give you a story from the Quran based on those birds and why we should appreciate ecology, and that will turn into a khutbah. And you come away feeling that your Islam is holistic, it's integrated with life. It's not like trying to squeeze this rigid, joyless square into a round hole. And a lot of that is what we're doing. And we're creating a lot of dissonance, cognitive dissonance. We're creating a lot, in the black community now, a lot of racial self-hatred in the black community, or continuation of it that started with when we were Christians and hated ourselves because Jesus was blonde and blue-eyed. We leave that to venerating other fair-skinned people. We may not present images of Muhammad or the prophets or God in Islam. And that was the attraction in the beginning. I forgot to mention that. One of our attractions to Islam as black people was there were no racial images of God. You could not associate God with a race. Yet, indirectly, what I saw developing in the 90s was this veneration of Arabs as chosen people among my community. And I felt that was wrong. And that's all I tend to talk about. And so when we're discussing subjects like this is the cultural imperialism and I use those two words again, and geopolitics. This is what I discuss, how it impacts on my people. And that's why I came here today dressed in Omani clothing, because I want you to go home and read about Sultan Qaboos, who died yesterday. Was it yesterday? 2 days ago. Yeah, of Oman, and how much good he has done for that country since and I'll repeat it, since he deposed his father in a palace coup, which is also true. You also have to balance it and say his father was a medieval despot, a really backward person, and he deposed his father with the help of the British. But he did well for his country, and I would love that example in my African Caribbean community. I'm sorry, am I too much up on this? But I would love that for my community. That example of Sultan Qaboos in Oman. I don't have much time for Khalij Arabs, for Gulf, but I have a lot of time for Oman. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, my dear. Thanks for listening.
Sheikh, I'm going to have to get
Thank you all for listening. I think I'll wrap it up here. Thank you all for your kind attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. People, include Sultan Qaboos in your dua. Inshallah khair. Yeah, where is Al-Masul?
She didn't say that she was yeah, but she's a bit funny to ask how to raise the camera.
I'm looking for the guy to tell him to. Yeah, I don't want to leave it without. Okay, will you start? Let me go look for it. We can have a discussion. We can cut it in 3. Because that's effectively 2 different discussions. It would have been very good to ask her. I think we got ContentCOE everything from now to Behaviour.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. man don't listen to ITV.
Do we see the way? It's like they're not very assertive with it. You know what I mean? Like Raheem was. Assalamu alaikum. He says that.
Yeah.
Most Def was.
Proud of their Islam.
And I think that was one of the, like, culturally speaking, that's one of the reasons why you don't see as much. I mean, you're from the end side. I'm from. So, like, what would you say? What was the reason? Because there has been a drop in
It has stagnated. It's. Do you know what? It's hard to put my finger on it, to be honest. Because when I embraced the deen in 2005, Islam was like.
I mentioned it to him. What did I say? 2005, right?
2005. Yeah.
He's one of those. He's from that generation.
That's when Islam was booming in the end.
I know. We were doing the work.
So, yeah, no, it's. I don't know. What is it that you think is slowed down the reach of Islam? I feel like personally, especially to the road youths, there seemed to be like a practical exit from the road life. There was a lot of good spill given to them. But as time went on, those alternatives weren't actually solidified.
So it was just like aesthetics?
It was, and that's what we find as well, that a lot of things were sold to us, like Islam was rosy. And then we entered Islam and we realised, oh no, it's not as straightforward as we thought it was. The sects start opening up to you, different theological battles start coming out. And for many people it was overbearing. A lot of people that I know that in those years embraced Islam, I'm not leaving. It didn't cater to them, nor did the brothers cater to their lifestyle. But again, it's like, what should have been, or how do we reform Islam, or pitch Islam, and make it look appealing to the hood again?
You know, Wallahi, I would love to have this conversation, no disrespect to this channel, on Salam, if you can.
That would be, Okay.
So,
Reza.
Just let him know we go. I think it's a very good conversation.
Reza, we're going to knock this one off still, man.